All right, lovely. Well, hi everybody. We'll just get started here. As you might have heard Zoom say, this meeting is being recorded. My name is Genevieve Lucas-Conwell. I'm the Director of Programs at Actera. Actera today is helping facilitate this meeting for the public workshop on planned amendments to Rule 6.3 regarding wood burning devices. Our speaker today is Julia Luongo, who will be going through his presentation with you all today. I will go through the agenda for today's meeting. If we can go to the next slide. All right, wonderful. So we'll start the meeting off with some introductions and opening remarks from Air District staff. We will do overview of Rule 6.3, give some context around the emissions. Then we'll go through the planned rule amendments, some next steps, as well as this place for questions and answers from Air District staff. So a couple of meeting guidelines just to help us guide the meeting along. So participants will be able to ask questions and provide input during Q&A and agenda items. In this space, you might have seen that when you're joining the meeting, you're automatically muted just until questions and answers. If you do have any questions that come up before the time for questions and answers at the end, please use the chat feature and Air District staff will answer periodically to your questions. Then we just have a quick how to use Zoom guide. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a little black toolbar where you have a microphone that is a mute. That is a feature that you can use to mute your microphone and unmute. Currently, they're all muted, so no need to touch them until questions and answers. We have the video feature in case you're interested in turning on and off your video. If you prefer having captions during the meeting, please feel free to use the show captions feature. And then also the chat. So feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions. And then reactions is a place for you to react to an emoji. If things are looking good, feel free to use a thumbs up emoji, or this is also another place you can use to raise your hand. During questions and answers, we will be going in by order in terms of questions. So feel free to use your raise hand feature, and whoever's hands are first raised will go by that order. If you are having trouble using any of these features, feel free to message us in the chat and we'll help guide you along. Next up, we have opening remarks by Victor Douglas, the Director of Rules and Strategic Policy. So I will be handing over the microphone to him.
Thank you, Genevieve. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Again, my name is Victor Douglas, and I'm the Director of the Rules and Strategic Policy Division here at the Air District, the Bay Area Air District. I appreciate all of you taking the time to attend this public workshop on planned amendments to Rule 6.3, which regulates wood burning devices in the Bay Area. This rule has been an important part of the Bay Area's clean air strategy since its adoption in 2008, but we know there's more work to do. Wood smoke remains one of the leading sources of wintertime fine particulate matter, also known as PM 2.5, which is especially harmful to public health. The health science on this issue continues to grow, and it's clear that even short-term exposure to wood smoke can have serious impacts, particularly for children, seniors, and people with existing heart or lung conditions. The plan updates we're discussing today are a direct expression of our commitment to the Achieve Impacts goal in the Air District's strategic plan. That means focusing on our work where it can have the greatest benefit, delivering improvements in air quality and reducing disparities across the Bay Area and in communities most impacted by air pollution. And that commitment is important to our AB 617 communities of West Oakland and North Richmond, San Pablo, who have identified wood smoke reduction as priorities in their community emission reduction plans. We are also guided by the Air District strategic plan goal to adopt stronger regulations. rules that reflect the best available science and health data. The planned amendments to Rule 6.3 are grounded in current evidence and are designed to better protect residents from the health impacts of wood smoke, especially on days where weather conditions trap pollution close to the ground. We understand these updates may raise questions and concerns, and we're here tonight to hear from you. Your input would help shape this rule to be more effective and equitable, and that moves us closer to our mission for clean air for all. Thank you again for being here. We look forward to walking through the plan changes with you and answering your questions. With that, I'll turn it over to the team to begin our presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Victor. Wonderful. And next up, we will be starting the presentation, going over the overview for Rule 6.3 with our speaker, Julia Luongo.
Thank you, Genevieve. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Julia Luongo. I'm one of the lead rule development staff working on this initiative, and I'll be walking you all through our planned amendments to Rule 6.3 for wood burning devices. So let's begin with a quick overview of what Rule 6.3 covers. There are many types of wood burning devices, but for our emissions tracking, we group them into two broad categories: fireplaces and wood stoves. The graphic on the left side of this slide illustrates how different devices compare in terms of emissions. On the left side, you'll see dirtier devices like an open hearth fireplace, and on the right, cleaner alternatives like EPA certified stoves and electric heating options. It's important to remember that fireplaces, while common, are actually quite inefficient for heating. Most lose over 90% of their heat straight out of the chimney and often pull heated air out of your home as well. Wood stoves are enclosed and can be either freestanding or inserted into existing fireplaces. Those are called fireplace inserts, and they are subject to emission standards and certified by the EPA. Where fireplaces, on the other hand, are not regulated as heaters and typically serve more of an aesthetic purpose. So currently, Rule 6.3 makes it illegal to burn wood in these devices on days when particulate matter is forecast to exceed 35 micrograms per cubic meter over 24 hours. We issue what's called a spare the air alert on these days, and that triggers what we refer to as a mandatory burn ban when it is illegal to burn wood. That is also sometimes referred to as burn curtailment. There are exemptions to the burn ban. For instance, if wood is your only source of heat, if your primary heater isn't working, or during a power or gas outage, then you can still burn during a burn ban. Beyond burn bans, Rule 6.3 also prohibits installing wood burning devices in new buildings. If you're doing a major fireplace remodel, meaning a project over $15,000 that requires a building permit, you can only install a gas, electric, or EPA certified device. And the rule also prohibits excessive smoke throughout the year, regardless of burn bans. Rule 6.3 is just one piece of our broader approach to reducing wood smoke. We use multiple strategies: forecasting air quality, notifying the public, conducting enforcement controls, and offering incentives to switch to cleaner heating sources. Between 2016 and 2019, we funded nearly 1,000 projects to replace or decommission wood burning devices. And more recently, we launched the Clean Heat program to help people make the switch to electric heat pumps. We also require labels and disclosures when wood burning devices are sold or rented, and when solid fuels like firewood are sold, to ensure residents know the rules. Now in this section, I'll give some contextual background and baseline on wood smoke impacts in the Bay Area. In May of 2024, we presented potential wood smoke mitigation policy options to our Stationary Source Committee. That work led to the wood smoke white paper, which we released in November of last year for public comment. The paper provided technical background, updated our emissions inventory and modeling, and assessed health impacts from wood smoke. After reviewing public comments and coming back to our Stationary Source Committee earlier this year, we began developing draft amendments to Rule 6.3. Now, before I dive into the data, I thought we could pause and do a poll and ask the question, how many wood burning devices do you all think there are in the Bay Area? So let's go ahead and launch that poll.
All right, everybody. So you should see in front of your Zoom screen a poll that has been launched. If you're having trouble with seeing the pop-up in the Zoom because Zoom for some reason is being a little bit difficult tonight, feel free to answer the question, how many wood burning devices are there in the Bay Area, in the chat. So feel free to take a random guess. And we'll have this up for an extra 30 seconds.
Great. Okay, I see the results are coming in. Got most people thinking there are just under 2.5 million.
Great, perfect. I think, sorry, the poll stopped for some reason. So we'll just relaunch it for an extra little bit. Oh, my apologies. If you see it, feel free to retry it and then we'll share the results in. Oh, it keeps ending for some reason.
That's okay. I think we got a sense. Most people were looking at the highest number here. And I think the next one down, folks were thinking there were about 1 million. So let's go ahead and reveal how many wood burning devices there are here in the Bay Area. So next slide, please. So our surveys show that there are roughly 1 million indoor wood burning devices in the Bay Area, and around 38% of those are used actively during the winter season. There's actually another animation on this slide as well. So most of these devices, about 3/4 are fireplaces and the remainder are wood stoves. Let's go ahead and advance. There we go. Okay, so next slide, please. So here we are showing emissions from all wood burning devices combined. Wood burning contributes about 14% of our region's annual PM2.5 emissions. And in winter months of December and January, that contribution jumps to 34%, highlighting its seasonal impact. Now, this map here shows where wood burning has the most impact on annual PM2.5 concentrations. The effects are spread across the region, but northern counties like Napa see especially high levels. You can see contributions vary up to about 0.8 micrograms per cubic meter. And the table on the slide here provides specific population-weighted averages, and it also includes data specific to our Assembly Bill 617 communities. So Napa, for example, at the top of the table shows that the average modeled impact is 0.6 micrograms per cubic meter. And then the second column shows the percentile. So for Napa, 98% means only 2% of Bay Area residents are exposed to more than that. So more than 0.6 micrograms per cubic meter from residential wood burning. You can see the Bay Area regional average in the middle of the table. That's the 50th percentile. And when we think about the federal annual limit being 9 micrograms per cubic meter, and that there's a portion of that 9 that we can't control, such as particulate matter that's transported into our region, 0.34 can make a big difference. Next slide, please. So here we are looking at modeled PM2.5 exposure disparities among racial and ethnic groups. The chart on the right shows 2 scenarios. One is the baseline scenario where all sources are modeled on the left. And then the second scenario is a control scenario where we remove all wood burning emissions to see the impact of that mitigation. An important reminder here is that this is just looking at wood burning, and wood burning is just one contributor to someone's total PM2.5 exposure. So in our baseline scenario, people of color have higher average exposure to total PM2.5, with that average disparity being 0.7 micrograms per cubic meter. When we remove wood burning emissions from the model, so moving from the left side to the right side of the chart, the average exposure drops by 0.3 micrograms per cubic meter across all groups, but the disparities in exposure remain. So this illustrates how wood smoke is one part of a broader, more complex picture of air pollution and equity. Here is how many Spare the Air alerts we've issued each year for high levels of particulate matter. The dark blue bars represent days with wildfire smoke impacts, and the light blue bars show days without impacts from wildfire smoke. We average about 16 particulate matter Spare the Air alerts per year, but you can see how major wildfire years have increased our alert average total. For example, 2020 is a big year that increased that average. So now let's talk about the plan changes to Rule 6.3. The most substantial change is lowering the mandatory burn ban threshold from 35 to 25 micrograms per cubic meter. We're also planning some administrative updates to align with EPA standards. So why are we lowering the threshold? We're recommending this change based on strong scientific consensus that the current threshold isn't protective enough. In 2020, the Air District's Advisory Council recommended further efforts to reduce ambient PM levels to protect public health in the Bay Area. Also, multiple health and regulatory bodies, including the EPA's Science Advisory Group, the California Air Resources Board, the Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment, and the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health, all support a lower PM2.5 24-hour standard of somewhere between 25 and 30 micrograms per cubic meter. And the South Coast Air Quality Management District is also planning to move to a 25 microgram per cubic meter threshold this year. If this amendment is adopted, we estimate it could result in an average of 26 additional Spare the Air alerts per year. The potential increase in Spare the Air alerts has been added in the chart in dotted blue at the top of each bar. So this is the same Spare the Air data presented a few slides ago, but with the potential increase from the lowering of the threshold added on top. This estimate was made by looking at the number of days in our historical data that would have surpassed the lower threshold of 25 micrograms per cubic meter. These additional days would help us further reduce short-term exposure to harmful air pollution and likely also benefiting long-term exposure as well. If wood burning were fully curtailed on these additional burn ban days, we could see up to 155 tons of PM2.5 reduced annually, or 1.19 tons per winter day. These figures represent maximum potential reductions and do not account for rule compliance. And to put that in perspective, these reductions are somewhat comparable to our recent rule amendments for building appliances in 2023 and the refinery catalytic cracking unit amendments in 2021, shown in the yellow bars on the chart. We are also planning a few updates to improve clarity and consistency. These include aligning emissions ratings and limits with federal standards and moving the burn ban threshold out of the definition section and into the rules standards section for better transparency. So here's what's coming next. We plan to release the draft rule and staff report for a 30-day public comment period in July. And after that, we'll present the final proposal with response to comments to our board of directors at a public hearing this fall. And that wraps up the presentation portion of tonight's workshop. We'd love to hear from you all. Please raise your hand or use the chat to share your comments or ask any questions. And I'll hand it back to Genevieve to facilitate our Q&A.
Thank you, Julia, for that wonderful presentation. As Julia mentioned, we will not be taking questions. As mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, please use the raise hand feature to just let us know that you're interested in either a comment or a question. And if you would like to also use the chat feature, that we will also be dictating the questions from the chat there. If you are joining us by phone, feel free to raise your hand using *9, and you'll be able to unmute using *6. All right, we'll open up the floor now. I don't see any questions. Oh, I see some questions coming in. All right, I see a question from Donna Simons. How does residential wood stove burning compare to burning of agricultural burn piles and refinery emissions?
Hi, Donna. Thank you for that question. Can we go back to the emissions inventory slide for a moment? So that's the one that had kind of the two circular pie charts. So that can give us a sense for how it compares to some of these more broad categories. So if we look at the one on the left here, refineries would be within the point sources, so the light blue. So to compare residential, it is just one piece of that. I would say if we're looking at this, residential wood burning is one of the largest sources of particulate matter in the Bay Area. I don't have it offhand a comparison to some of our like agricultural burning activity, but we can say that residential wood burning is likely at least an order of magnitude larger. So it is quite a large source in the Bay Area. I will check in with David Holsius, who's on the call here, and see if he has anything to add on how these emissions may compare to some of these other sources that you've mentioned.
Julia, like you, I don't have those figures right at hand, but I think this is a good framing. And then also keeping in mind that during the winter time, wood burning is more emissions than all of our point sources combined beyond refineries.
Thanks, David.
Right. Wonderful. We do have some other questions in the chat, some that came privately. So I have a question from Crystal. Residential wood burning is the largest source of PM 2.5 in the Bay Area by the BACMed annual report. And that seems more of a comment than a question. And so Crystal, I know that you were having trouble raising your hand earlier. If you want to come off mute and ask or add on to your comment. All right, if there's no further comments or if you're interested in responding later, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to support you there. And then we do have DY that also mentioned that they were having trouble raising their hand. So DY, if you do, if you're still having trouble, but would like to ask your question, feel free to do so. There we go. All right. Let us know if you're having trouble.
Hi. So I understand like the major thrust of this rule as it relates to like Spare the Air Days. It's kind of a public health global, well, not global, but like more of a regional approach to air quality. And I was wondering if there could be any considerations made to like very local air quality concerns, because I've dealt with this issue constantly over the past few years, where there's like one bad actor in the neighborhood who's creating excessive amount of smoke for neighbors, or even, you know, even if you live next to like someone who has a fireplace, and then because of airflow, like air just traps behind your house. I've measured like PM 2.5 of 118 micrograms per cubic meter at my window, which is far above the burn ban threshold. That seems very unhealthy to have to live through that every day, like every morning. And then when people are and there's also like a, you know, and that's just for like, you know, just general smoke that accumulates near a house in the winter. But in the summer, there can be things like barbecues, and I know there's often an exception for cooking, but I've measured PM 2.5 of over 300 micrograms per meter cubed near my window, and PM 10 of 584 micrograms per meters cubed. So like there can be very local, extremely hazardous concentrations of smoke, and not just smoke, but all the other like PAHs and other volatile organic compounds that can come from wood burning. And when you start a wood fire, like there may be other kindling that's involved that may be very hazardous as well. So like this kind of thing, like I've tried to deal with it, and according to my experience, working with their air quality management inspectors and things like that, there's very limited recourse for anyone who wants to deal with this kind of issue. There aren't really any consistent rules about air quality at a local level, like in the neighborhood level. It's kind of dependent upon city code, and the cities don't generally have anything regarding smoke in particular, or emissions. And so there's not much people can do about it. Bay Area air quality inspectors can go out, but they only work like 9 to 5. And so a lot of times, if you're having a barbecue, it's usually around dinner time on the weekend. And so there's, you know, enforcement doesn't really work in that scenario, right? And so I'm just, you know, wanted to pose that question: is there something that could be done in the rulings to protect like local, like very local, hyper local types of high concentrations of air quality?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and I hear you on that localized exposure concern. I will, I think, kick it over to our compliance and enforcement to talk a bit more about what we do with what we would always encourage submitting a air pollution complaint to us when those instances are happening. And it's definitely something we'll note for potential future amendments that may be able to get at something like that. You mentioned kind of local rules, and you're right, there aren't very many at the city level. The only one we're aware of is Berkeley. City of Berkeley does have some unique wood smoke dispute ordinances to try to get at that, you know, really localized concern and exposure. But I think I'll pass it over to Grace who can maybe give a little bit more information about what we do with those wood smoke complaints, and if there's anything from the enforcement side of things.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Grace. I'm work with the Compliance and Enforcement Division. So, we, the Air District, we do encourage the public to report any air quality complaints. The complaints can be either submitted online or by phone. For general air pollution complaints, you can call 1-800-334-6367. And for wood smoke complaints from indoor wood burning devices such as the fireplaces or wood smoke, please call 1-877-466-2876. To clarify how the Air District Enforcement Division handles wood smoke complaints, the inspectors have inspection protocols, and they patrol in areas where there's high number of complaints or high levels. And due to the large number of wood smoke complaints, the inspectors don't aren't dispatched to meet, but they just go and patrol. But we do take all our complaints very seriously. So whenever a wood smoke complaint is reported, it initiates our enforcement response. So our enforcement, this complaint information is logged into our wood smoke system to help direct wood smoke investigations. And we also our enforcement staff does send out wood smoke information letters or information packets to addresses provided. If there aren't any specific addresses, or if the individual requests like additional door hangers that have information, we can send out some of that too. And you can possibly hang the door hangers around different houses in the neighborhood, because if we don't have a specific address, so we can provide you that information to send them. A lot of times we find that educating the alleged source helps them reduce the use of wood smoke, as well as along with sending that wood smoke information packets, we do send them information of transitioning out of to cleaner options, such as with our clean heat program. That is also sent out along. So these complaints do help our inspectors patrol, because they typically patrol in the areas where there are they can see a high number of concentrations where there are complaints, or in the areas that are designated as AB 617 communities. So, and when they are violations that are issued, the inspector will document that and hand it over to our legal division.
Great.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Genevieve.
No, go for it, Julia, if you have something to add to
I was
that.
just going to say, thank you, Grace. And you mentioned our clean heat program. So I'm wondering, Jessica, if you maybe just want to touch on our incentive programs that can help encourage folks to replace some of these wood burning devices with cleaner alternatives.
Sure. Hi, I do see that the caller, you have your hand up, so I don't know if you wanted to I'll take a moment to let you respond if you'd like.
Oh yeah, I guess I also wanted to specifically ask about, because a lot of this is concerning like wood heat and wood, fireplace type burning, but I find that like cooking, like barbecues, either charcoal or wood burning barbecues can also create large amounts of smoke and other noxious, carcinogenic, like organic compounds in the air. So, but from my understanding is that once people say it's food related, then there's all sorts of exceptions, and there's not much like on the rules against cooking. Like once someone says it's cooking, even though there might not actually be food there, they can kind of get around this wood burn ban.
That's right. Yeah. That is correct. Cooking is an exception. It's not the case everywhere. So if you look at, say, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, they do include outdoor cooking devices within their burn curtailment program. It is a policy option that we previously have presented to our board and considered. And so I'm glad to hear you bringing that up. It's definitely something that we could look into because it's something we've seen before. And yeah, I hear you that those currently in our current rule are not part of a burn ban. I see you raised your hand again. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, yeah. So like, I responded in a comment to the white paper, and like, I've sought lots of advice about this. And so one of the advice given, because if you start, I understand that trying to curtail burning for cooking has strong emotional objections to a lot of people. And so there may be pushback against that. And I think rather than saying you can't barbecue, you can't cook, perhaps make it more quantitative, like you can cook, but you can't cook in a way that increases PM 2.5 levels at your neighbor above a certain threshold, and then set a threshold for safety, like public safety, that way. And so it's something quantified based upon health rather than something saying you can't do this because it's that, like quantify it in terms of its impacts to other people in a very specific way rather than saying like you can't do something, just taking it away from them. So if they can figure out another way to do that that doesn't cause impacts to other people, by all means go for it, right? You can cook, but don't like give cancer to your neighbors.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. So we do have some folks that have messaged me in the chat that are interested in also making a comment or question. So Crystal, I will pass it to you if you're interested in taking this time to ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm the administrator for the Bay Area Clean Air Coalition. I also have asthma, so I'm really excited about these proposals, or the lowering the threshold proposal in particular. So thank you so much for all the data, and I really hope that we can stick to that 25 micrograms per cubic meter, just like Southern California is proposing. And thank you to the previous speaker for talking about localized pollution. It is a real problem. And I just wanted to mention there are no safe levels of particulate matter for anyone. It's a climate concern. Wood burning, according to the annual report, is the top source of particulate matter for the whole year, is my understanding, according to BAAD. I just wanted to make a point to say, please look into maybe getting away from eco stoves. 10 states did sue the EPA because where there's fire, there is smoke, and that the science wasn't really totally there for eco stoves. So I know that comes from the EPA to support those, but they're just as smoky. So just to sort of consider that. I wanted to talk about enforcement a little bit. I just hope that maybe we can find more enforcement. I have read that very few fines have been given in the past, so just something to think about for Spare the Air Days. I would also love to see at some point how many lives would be saved, and hospitalizations, quality of life situations. And I think you all are doing a great job with education. If you could just keep that up and even maybe ramp it up, I'm always all for that. And I just wanted to mention one last thing, and I mentioned it in my comments earlier to the Air District, but a total ban is possible. A city in the Netherlands is going to ban wood burning by 2030. Canberra in Australia is planning to ban it by 2045. So like it is possible. Yeah, I'll stop. That's a lot, but thank you so much for letting me talk.
Thank you for those comments, Crystal. I would like to point you to our wood smoke white paper. That white paper did include some health impacts assessment of wood burning in the Bay Area. Now, it's not specific to this planned amendment, but it is a little bit of what we talked about today. So kind of looking at if we were to completely remove wood burning from the Bay Area, what would be sort of the health impact of that mitigation. So we do have a little bit of information on that in that wood smoke white paper that I'm hoping maybe one of my colleagues can pop a link in the chat to that document. Thanks for your comments.
The link to that has been added in the chat. Wonderful. Any other questions, comments for our speakers? And Tony, I see that you've unmuted. Are you interested in making a comment or have a question for our speakers?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Yes. The main question that I have is with, representing the Coalition for Clean Air is that is BAAQMD using real-time sensors like Purple Air around the entire Bay Area to determine all hotspot PM 2.5 areas? In other words, especially during the winter.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for that question. So what we did present today in the presentation is a modeling exercise. So that one's not based on monitors. It's based on what we know in our inventory about wood burning devices and how frequently they're used. And then we kind of build up the model to estimate emissions and then look at what that means in terms of concentrations across the Bay Area. I want to see if we have somebody from meteorology and measurements that can touch on how we do use monitoring data. Let's see, who do we have here? Charlie or
Yeah.
Michael?
I think I can touch on this a little bit.
Thank
Our
you.
forecasting is based off of the Regulatory Monitoring Network. We do use the Purple Air monitors as guidance. However, there are known issues with using those monitors, so we can't rely on them for official forecasts. And if Michael's here, you might be able to add a little more about the Purple Air sensors and how they are affected.
It looks like perhaps Michael's not on at the moment, but thank you. Yeah, thanks, Charlie, for that. And Tony, I'm happy to, if I can help answer questions offline, I'm happy to connect with you so that we can get you more information about how we're, utilizing monitoring as well.
Yes, the real thing is that we're looking for is using real data to determine whether these hotspots are there, because I can drive down my interstate next to me during the winter, and at times during the when I can smell on the road the wood smoke that's coming over by the wind on the road. You can smell it, and the key thing is we got to find, and they're near, at least qualitatively, they are near let's say dense residential areas. And this goes, no matter where you travel, especially in winter, especially if they are using the fireplaces. So I just mentioned that I like to, it seems to work that if you use real data to, even though it might not be the best, to guide you on whether those where those hotspots are, because what needs to be done is then you come up with control programs around those hotspot areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And just a reminder, if you're interested in making a comment or question, just to use the raise your hand feature. If you're having trouble, feel free to message us in the chat and we'll happily call upon you. Wonderful. Are there
And
any?
is it okay if I respond to Marina
Yes,
really quickly? So, hola Marina, disculpa que no tenemos interpretación hoy. Si me puede mandar un mensaje, yo le puedo ayudar y responder sus preguntas. Veo que estás preguntando si el año 2020 tuvimos más contaminación, y es que en el año 2020 había muchos fuegos, entonces el aire sí estaba más contaminado y por eso teníamos más días que no se podía quemar. Pero si me puede mandar un mensaje a mí o a alguien en mi equipo, le podemos tratar de traducir todos los materiales, y también yo le puedo responder a sus preguntas. Gracias.
Sí, gracias a usted.
wonderful.
If you don't mind, if you want to give our answer to that as well, so people can hear.
Yes, so the question was if in 2020 our air quality was worse. And so I mentioned that that was a bad wildfire year, and that's why in our chart we did have a lot more spare the air alerts that year. And so we did have higher concentrations of particulate matter because it was a bad wildfire year.
Thank you for taking that time to answer that question. Wonderful. Are there any other questions for our presenters? Any comments as well?
Maybe I'll just reiterate one of the questions in the chat here. I see that Paul asked about whether this will impact fuels reduction projects. And I see that Charlie answered in the chat, but just wanted to reiterate. So this changes to Rule 6.3 for wood burning devices. It does not impact our Regulation 5 program for open burning. And so there will be no change to permissive burn days in that Regulation 5 program. This is just on wood burning devices here.
Thank you, Julia. Wonderful. Thank you all for your questions and your comments. Have been great this evening. Just take an extra couple of minutes to see if anyone else is interested in having any additional comments or questions. All right, wonderful. Well, if there are no other comments or questions, then we will move on to the next portion of our slide. And if we can just do the next slide. All right, perfect. So if some of your questions, you still have some lingering questions or comments, right here on the screen, you'll see Julia, our speaker's email address, as well as any wood smoke specific questions that you can ask. There's a specific designated inbox for that, woodsmokerule@bacmed.gov. So feel free to ask any of your questions through there. But otherwise, thank you all so much for being an engaged audience, for your comments. This will really help the Air District finalize the proposed or the planned amendments. And as a reminder that public comments are open as well. So if you didn't have any of your comments go through tonight, that's also an excellent time to also include your comments. And I'll pause there, and I do see that there are some questions that came into the chat. So since we have some time here, we'll take some time to answer those. So I see one from Lori. Is there any way my neighbors can be stopped from their chronic fireplace use? I'm extremely allergic.
Hi, Lori. So this, we had a similar question earlier this evening. Yeah, I hear you on the kind of localized impacts there. So we would encourage the use of submitting a complaint with us, and every time, so we can keep that log when that's happening. And we have a number of ways that we track that and can try to encourage folks to to have cleaner alternatives to what they're doing. Grace, do you want to just quickly touch on our complaint process? And yeah, unfortunately, Lori, this particular amendment is really getting at, regionally reducing those short-term exposures, but unfortunately is not tackling that very kind of localized use of a wood burning device on days where it is permissible to burn. But it's definitely something that we're open to considering in future future amendments.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've submitted many complaints to this board, and if they're not, and they've come and seen the smoke coming out of this neighbor's chimney day after day and night after night, and nothing happens because she's not burning on Save the Air days, and they tell me that nothing is going to happen, and I'm so sick from this pollution that I am considering in desperation selling my house and moving, because it's really affecting me, seriously affecting me. So I've spoken to the woman and she's not open to it. She's a renter. I've called the landlady. She's not open to discussing it. This is their main heating device, and it's not fair. I mean, there are other neighbors who have told me they're also suffering, but they're not, for some reason, interested in complaining about it. Is there nothing that can be done other than me moving? I can't even go outside, on a spring day because the smoke is hitting my backyard intensely.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. I wonder if there's any sort of nuisance. It's possible under some maybe local ordinance, or I don't know, Grace, if you want to touch on kind of any sort of nuisance approaches, but from a perspective of this particular rule, a complaint would be the process that we would point you to. But I am really sorry to hear about that.
It's unincorporated Contra Costa County, and nobody has been able to help me in the county or elsewhere. So it would be wonderful if this could be attended to, because there are serious health effects from this kind of exposure, as you know, and I'm experiencing them very extremely.
I do. I mean, if your neighbor is at all open to it,
she is not open.
Even I would say an incentive program, that could replace that heat source. We have an open incentive program, but I know it's it's out of your control. So, yeah.
So nothing's coming in the future to address this.
We're absolutely open to consider future restrictions that could do that. This particular plan amendment is not going to be tackling that issue specifically.
How can I get active to do something about this so that it will be considered in the near future? I've called and asked, and nobody seems to be interested.
Well, showing up and letting us know here and providing your public comment absolutely helps, with our record that, there are folks looking for additional restrictions on these rules. I think that there might be a case to get active at the local level. I had mentioned earlier that City of Berkeley has an ordinance around this kind of localized exposures and wood smoke disputes. And that could be something that other locals or counties in your case could consider. So, that could be another avenue to try to have, another way to try to dispute this very kind of local impact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lori. We do have another question in the chat from Marina that I will roughly translate. What chemicals did we find when we were contaminated in 2020? I don't know if that was the direct translation or not, but.
So I think I'll have to reach back out to Marina to maybe connect her with some of the folks in our meteorology and measurements to see whether we have any data to help understand the particulate matter exposures in 2020. So Marina, veo tu pregunta y yo le voy a responder por correo electrónico porque tengo que chequear con otra gente que tiene esa respuesta porque yo no la tengo hoy, pero yo le voy a mandar un mensaje.
Sí,
Gracias.
All right, wonderful. And Marina, we have been able to notate your email, so we will bring any translated materials your way. All right, lovely. Any other questions or comments? All right,
So,
perfect. Oh, yes, Grace, go for it.
so regarding some of the complaints, with our inspections, the complaints does give our inspection staff an idea of where to patrol when it's, when there's Spirit of Air Days in effect. But, staff has to be present to observe it before they can issue any violation. But if you're saying that we can't do anything, there is a state law, or that gives the Air District authority over public nuisances, but in the case where it's your neighbor or someone near you, they might be responsible for a private nuisance that can affect you or your home. And so this usually doesn't, the Air District's authority doesn't usually extend to private nuisances, but you can be able to contact an attorney if you wish to pursue a private nuisance against your neighbor, or pursue action on yourself at a small claims court. So, yeah, and until that, until we have anything, I encourage you to make complaints, because it gives us proactive areas to patrol, and they're important because they show the inspector or show the Air District that there's an problem area or hotspots, so it guides our focus during our wood smoke patrols, and so it helps the inspectors catch those the wood smoke violations. Thanks.
Thank you, Grace, for adding that information. All right, any other comments or questions for our speakers today? Right. We'll give it one more minute. All right, I see no hands raised or any questions. So if you do have any questions that come up after this meeting, as I mentioned before, this is the public comment period that is open. So feel free to use that time to bring up any concerns or anything that you think needs to be involved in the plan amendments. The email is there as well as as at your disposal to use after this meeting. Thank you all for coming today again, and for being such an engaged audience. And I hope you have a lovely evening.